Hello friends, it's Sa, your favorite yogi, coming back at you with another video. Today we're discussing the Niyamas, the second limb of the 8 limbs of yoga. Last time we discussed the Yamas, which is the first limb, its complement, which are the ethical precepts. The Niyamas are the inner values, the internal practices. These are constructive tools that are used for cultivating happiness and wellness and self-confidence. They're positive duties, observances. It is the way we behave towards ourselves, the way we carry ourselves, our inward self, throughout the world. And we have opportunities to practice these every single day, every moment, in fact. And the first of these 5 inner values is shausha, which is purity. It means purity in Sanskrit, or cleanliness, or immaculation. So to be very immaculate is a condition of shausha. It is a removal of internal and external impurities. Those impurities that prevent us from spiritual liberation. And within this, we can practice asana, which is the 3rd limb, the physical postures. Pranayama, the 4th limb, which is the breath work, distribution of breath, and meditation, which is the 7th limb. These help cultivate a being that is pure and cleansed and is immaculate. These practices help us to purify the mind and achieve a high level of purity. The second is santosha, which is contentment. Not craving or desiring what we do not have, and not coveting or wanting things that we do not possess, or wanting things that other people possess. This contentment liberates us from unnecessary suffering. So it creates a condition where we do not have to suffer. It removes unnecessary suffering and pain. It also helps us to cultivate a high level of gratitude, appreciation for life and others. The third of these inner values is called tapas, which are the spiritual disciplines. These are practices of internal self-discipline and cultivation of the will, cultivation of our willpower. It is the act of doing the things that we shy away from, doing things that are uncomfortable. With those things which are uncomfortable that will sure enough help us to create an internal flame that will purify the body, that will create an internal being, a fire that will increase our spiritual energy. It can release us to states of awareness, of high levels of awareness, such as Kundalini. It can rise the Kundalini and bring us to a place of great enlightenment and powerful, resonant, vibrating spiritual energy. The 4th of the inner values of Niyamas, the 4th Niyama, is Svadhyaya, which is self-study. This is deep self-study, self-inquiry, some may call. It is truly examining who we are, all that we do, all that we are composed of, who we are in the moment, right now, and who we are in the future, and going beyond our current state of being. It's also the act of studying sacred texts, spiritual, ancient texts, that help us to recognize our place and our purpose in life and help us determine what direction we can go in. So this self-study and self-inquiry is very important. It's something that we must always refer back to as a reference point, a spiritual reference point, a point of reference. The last of the inner values is Ishvara Pranidhana, which is devotion, dedication, surrender to the divine. surrendering yourself to the divine, creating a great amount of devotion in your life. The surrender of all the fruits, the benefits of one's practice to a higher self, to a higher power, cultivating our practice in which we have a fullness of our complete self, a fullness of grace, inner peace, and an abundance of love, endless love, pouring out of us that we can share with the rest of the world. So these are the 5 inner values known as Niyamas, which is the second limb of the 8 limbs of yoga. And this is something we can practice every day. And if mastered, just like the yamas, if these are mastered, one can achieve samadhi, enlightenment, very quickly. There are people throughout the history of the world, great sages, manifestations of God, great prophets who had a supreme understanding of these inner values and ethical precepts, that they practiced them so well and they were so masterful in the practice, the everyday practice of these inner values and ethical precepts, that they were able to achieve enlightenment quickly. They were quickened very easily because of a self-mastery of these. And some did not even have to practice the other limbs, or did not even have to go to the depths of practicing the other limbs, and were able to achieve enlightenment from the mastery, from the understanding, supreme mastery of these inner values and ethical precepts. So they were able to bypass everything that was in between, the other limbs, and go to complete enlightenment, complete supreme consciousness with all that is. So we will go further in our next video to begin to talk about asana, sustained physical postures as we all know them. And just wanted to touch light on the video I did on the 8 limbs of yoga, the summary, and I was talking about the video I did prior to that, my interpretation, recitation of The Second Coming, a poem by William Butler Yeats. And the reason why I recited that poem, because it's a very powerful poem that talks about these core values within yoga, which deal with having to deal with the world and having to conduct yourself in the world and come back to yourself. There's a part of the poem where he says, the best lack all conviction, and the worst are full of passionate intensity. So he talks about how, within the world, those who have the potential to bring light to the world sometimes dim their light. And those who are working in the dark arts to bring the opposite, the worst, have the passion and intensity that the best of us should have, or the best of us should be cultivating. So that poem goes into a lot of things. It was written after the First World War, and it has a lot of references, spiritual references, and really talks about the practitioner, the individual within a world, and how that person conducts himself through the world, and how that person can better unlock and unleash those wonderful talents, wonderful gifts, wonderful, as I call them, faculties that will help transform the world. So in a sense, that poem talks about dealing with darkness and dark times. And what do you do? What does one do within times of darkness, times of war, as in the First World War, which was around the time, just after the end of the First World War, in which that poem was written. And then 20 years later, another war happened, the Second World War, and a whole century of tumult, of a whole century of contention and conflict, which was the 20th century. You know, how does one navigate such a time, such serious, such tumultuous times? And that is something the beautiful system of yoga, the beautiful prescription for living known as yoga, can address fully and completely. So, I digress. But as always, if you find this informative, or you enjoy, or you find some benefits from what I'm talking about from this video, you can always comment, click and subscribe to this channel to view more videos. And as always, I wish you peace, prosperity, tranquility, longevity, and vitality always.